whenever I hear combo, I think back to Trix. So Trix was a deck that was extremely powerful. When I see combo and someone says, "Hey, I have a combo deck," that's just where my brain goes first. This was the one that kind of made me fall in love with real combo decks. Um, there's been many combos in Magic's history. Some more straightforward, like Elf Ball is kind of a combo. You're making a whole huge army, flooding mana, tapping that all, and then comboing with a fireball. So that's kind of like a light combo. And then you have something like this, which, enough talking, these guys, that's a combo. That's a combo. So if you're not familiar with these cards, um, that's okay. At this point, they're relatively old. So what is the combo? So it centers around Illusions of Grandeur. This was an enchantment for 3 and a blue, cumulative upkeep 2. If you're not familiar with that mechanic, uh, the turn after this permanent, whatever it is, comes into play, you pay 2 colorless. The turn after that, so 2 turns out 4 colorless. The next turn after that, 6, 8, so on and so forth. So you had this growing cost for a very powerful effect. That was the idea. We're going to give you a powerful effect and then tie that to something that's going to eat all of your mana, and when you can no longer pay for it, something not great will happen to you. The first thing being, when you can no longer pay, you have to sacrifice that that item. So when you can no longer pay cumulative upkeep, you had to sacrifice the permanent. And in the case of Illusions of Grandeur, the final line of its text, its rules text, is when it leaves play, you lose 20 life. So you gain 20, you lose 20. Unless you have donate. Target player gains control of target permanent you control. So here you go, opponent. Have my used up illusions. We get the benefit, they get the pain. How do we do it? Well, at the time, Dark Ritual was very much illegal. Um, you combine that with Necropotence, skip your draw step. This is 3 black, so it perfectly aligns with the cost of Dark Ritual. So turn 1, drop Necro, skip your draw step. Whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard, pay 1 life, exile the top card of your library face down, put that card into your hand at the beginning of your next end step. And this is an enchantment. So turn 1, maybe you get out Swamp, Underground River, Underground Sea, Dark Ritual, Necropotence, 18 life, 18 cards. You usually want to leave 1 life left up for Force of Will. So Force of Will, you may pay 1 life and exile a blue card from your hand. Remember, at this point, with Necropotence, you've just drawn 18. So you have very likely drawn into your combo, extra copies of stuff like Brainstorm. You could pitch to Force of Will to counter. So this is a counter spell you can cast for the cost of 1 life and discarding a card. No mana whatsoever. So if you tap out on turn 1 for your Necro play, you can very much still counter something. So you already have protection, straight up. The following turn, illusions, you can drop that, gain 20 back. So you're right back up to where you need to be. You have your donate. We have other tricks. So if the opponent is running some kind of crazy mana generation ramp, like an elf deck maybe, and they've been able to amass enough to keep paying that cumulative upkeep, Hoodwink. Return target artifact, enchantment, or land to its owner's hand. So here you go. Here's the illusion. Even if you can pay for it, we're going to yank it back. You lose the 20. We win the game. So this is the combo I think of when when I hear combo deck. This was created and piloted by Scott McCord for Grand Prix Philadelphia 2000. Kai had a blue-red version a few years later. Super powerful, very high level performance. Surprisingly tricky to actually play over extended period of time. The combo could be fragile, but you had your cover, right? You had Force of Will, you had Search, Vampiric Tutor, so you could tutor up. I need my Necro, I need my Illusion, I need whatever, right? You tutor it up and get what you need. Demonic Consultation, another tutor dig effect, right? You have Contagion, so you can pay 1 life, remove a black card in your hand from the game, rather than paying its cost, which is 3 and 2 black, and then distribute 2 -2 -1 counters. So if an opponent is running a speed creature deck, you just need to get rid of a couple things, like maybe a Ball Lightning at the time, which was a 6/1 trampling, hasting red creature. You could do that. You just kill it on the spot. So it had a lot of smart answers, but you had to be smart when you played it. So, so with that stage set, what is the combo? The combo we're looking at today, and obviously we're not looking at Trix in MTGA. That's sadly impossible, and not to say that the deck we're going to look at is trying to beat Trix either, but it is one that the creator, which again we'll have the link down below, said they took on to the ladder, and the users in Discord were curious if it was worth investing wildcards in. So let's dive in and take a look at what we have for this deck. All right, so again, as I mentioned before, Temur colors: green, blue, red. We have a ramp package at the front end of the deck, and then we have the combo. We'll get to the middle part in a moment. So the combo revolves around Valakut Exploration, the Journey to the Oracle side of the Jadzi card, so the flip side, and Icebreaker Kraken. The idea for this combo is to have a large amount of actual land in play, all of it being snow covered, which discounts your Kraken first. And then if you look at the ability for Kraken, so first at base level it is 10 and 2 blue. Crazy expensive. One of the more expensive overall creatures or spells in the game, period. First line on the card. This spell costs 1 less colorless to cast for each snow land you control. Awesome. Then, when he enters the battlefield, artifacts and creatures target opponent control don't untap during that player's next untap step. Solid. Very nice. The main issue there, just in general, so like when you're looking at cards, should always be evaluating how they can be used, and even in this combo deck, the Icebreaker Kraken may need to be actually just used as a creature and for its normal purpose. So the tap down, so I kind of gave it away there. The does not untap effect that he provides is strong, but it doesn't come with a tap down effect. So when you play him and maybe if you're behind board state, he will not save you if the opponent has a completely untapped field. That it won't do anything for you at all. But if you bring him down and the opponent has just attacked with everything, it will buy you a turn. So again, just anytime you're looking at stuff, just pay attention to what the cards are, what they can do, because you may need to use them in totally different ways than you originally anticipated. And it pays to understand exactly what the card can do overall, beyond just what you wanted for that particular situation when you were building, or if you picked a net deck. Everything changes constantly. So being aware of all of the options you have is always a good thing. So moving on, we get to the final ability. Return 3 snowlands you control to their owner's hand. Return Icebreaker Kraken to its owner's hand. So for this to work, you need to be in full control. When you play the Icebreaker, you initially return 3 lands. And before you do any of this, you have to tap all of your land. So you're floating mana, because you're going to be recasting, at least, if not recasting, at least casting Journey to the Oracle. So you're going to need 2 green, 2 colorless available for this combo, at least to get rolling for the first time. On top of that, for the Journey side, you need at least something other than your soon to be bounced Icebreaker to discard to get Journey back to your hand after you cast it. So you're going to need additional throwaway cards in hand, not as part of the combo loop we're kind of going through here. That's very important to remember. So you float all the mana you can. You go into full control, return 3 for his ability. You activate his ability, return the 3, and then as that is put onto the stack, you reactivate his ability. And just keep doing that until you bounce as many land as you can. They're going to go to your hand. Icebreaker goes to your hand. Then you cast Journey to the Oracle. That's, again, 2 and a green. You may put any number of land cards from your hand onto the battlefield, untapped, unless they're one of these guys. So if it's a dual snowland, where it specifically says it enters the battlefield tapped, it will come into play tapped. So that's also important to remember. So if you do this and you have 8 or more lands, you can discard a card. If you do so, you get Journey to the Oracle back to hand, so you can keep looping this. But there's nothing inherently in any of these that are going to be drawing cards into your hand. So when you set up for the combo part, again, it's very important to remember to have at least the first card to discard plus one more, because normally you need at least 2 loops and maybe 3. So if you have 2 additional cards to pitch for that discard, then you can loop it multiple times. If you don't have those, that card capital, you can't do the loop, and you're going to wind up exiling. So let's take a look at our final card. So what does that do? How does that help us? So the enchantment exploration here, Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. At the beginning of your end step, if there are cards exiled with Valakut expiration, put them into their owner's graveyard. Then Valakut exploration, we can speak, deals that much damage to each opponent. So first of all, if this was a heads-up multiplayer game, like if you had 3 opponents, that would be amazing. However, that aside, so the very important point here is, one, whatever you get from this process is your damage. So if you use any of the cards being exiled, remove points if you're trying to count what your damage to the opponent is going to be, and if you can actually kill them that turn. If you exile 10 things and you're like, hey, you know what, it'd be cool if I did blah and cast 2 of those things, well, now your damage is 8. And if that makes it so you can no longer kill them, oops. So remember, first, anything exiled, that's your damage. Don't want to touch that. Second, those are exiled. They are not put into your hand. So for Journey to the Oracle, again, that discard part, you're not getting any additional cards into your hand for that discard in this process directly. So if you need additional cards, you need to make sure you start with at least 1, and then maybe you have Cosima already exiled, building up counters. You could bring her back, but that might be dangerous. Talk about that in a minute. To get some card draw. So that is the core of the combo. These 3 cards. the deck overall is really broken into 3 parts. You have ramp, combo, and then this middle portion. So if we just look at this deck, just by itself in relation to what the users on Discord were asking me, should I invest my wild cards in this? Will this be something I can take onto the ladder and do well with? Me just looking at it, my gut reaction was no. This is not a deck that will perform on the ladder well, I don't think. I don't think even if we went to best of 3, it would do particularly well with the card pool that we have available. I think the main issues with this type of combo, and this is kind of why I was showcasing Trix in the beginning so much, is there are multiple parts for this combo to work in the first place. So if it was just these 2 cards, just Jadzi and the Icebreaker, that's all we needed, and then we had some really cool combo, that would give us a lot more optional filler to shape the rest of the deck, to give us protection, draw, coverage, whatever it is we need to efficiently affect our combo, to make that combo happen. Without those things, we're kind of stuck. So if we take a look at the composition here, we have Neverwinter Dryad for our ramp, Field Trip, and Emergent Sequence. Compared to even normal standard, these are not necessarily the best options for ramping for this kind of deck. But in 22, these are really the best options we have. Then if we look at kind of the middle of the deck, so what's our filler? If this is our ramp, excuse me, if this is our ramp and this is our combo, we really need the combo, really need ramp, and it's important that this is land ramp. If we had treasure ramp, that wouldn't work, right? The whole thing revolves around this landfall, bounce, drop loop. So if we're just making treasures with like Prosperous Innkeeper, that doesn't help us. So we need land in play. There's very few cards right now in the 22 format that will allow you to get extra lands into play via search. So with that with that in mind, looking at the middle of the deck, what's our filler? What do we have as our tools to help bridge the gap between ramp and our combo? So first we have Divide by Zero. So this is, in this particular deck, used more like a bounce spell than a counter. The ways Divide by Zero can be used in general are numerous, and I'll do a separate video on some of these topics. But just as a spell, it is very versatile in what it can do. But this particular deck, if you're using that for counter, and something has probably gone wrong, because it's not necessarily effective as a counter spell per se, and there are reasons for that, which we may see as we do some gameplay. But for this particular deck, this is more used for bouncing or general protection duty. It also gives us access to the learn board along with Field Trip. So both of these kind of open up some tools to us, some sciences, so if we somehow do not have land in hand, we could dig for some land, whatever we needed. Teaching of the Archaics, which is an excellent learn card. However, it is super matchup dependent. If you are playing against White Weenie, you will probably not be able to cast this spell because you're always going to have more cards in hand than they will. So it effectively will become a dead card. So it can be good, or it could just be a dead card, dead spot. Then we have Basic Conjuration. Lets us dig for hopefully one of these guys if we don't have them yet. More often I was finding Dryad, Cosima, of course. So we have that option in there. Containment Breach. I mean, if you have green available in a learn board, that has to be in it. If it is not, you are nuts. Just, if you are making a learn board, you have green, put at least one in there. No question. Just put one in there. Mascot Expedition. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a staple at this point. And Fractal Summoning. lets you potentially make a large creature with all the ramp we're doing. You are not, possibly. So that's the learn board. Um, so then alongside, those to get access to ramp, some protection, learn, we have Cosima. So when you play her at the beginning of the next upkeep, you can exile Cosima. If you do, she gains effectively like a landfall ability in exile. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if Cosima is exiled, you may put a voyage counter on it. If you don't, so this is important if you're actually playing her, and you have the take action or decline. Taking action puts or keeps her in exile. Declining does not put a counter or takes her out of exile. Either way. So remember that. So if you don't, return Cosima to the battlefield with X +1 counters and draw X cards, where X is the number of voyage counters on it. So if you get to the upkeep, exile Cosima, play 3 lands. The first trigger, you take action, voyage counter. Second trigger, voyage counter, take action twice. The third one, you decline. She would come back with 2 voyage counters, which equals equals 2 +1 +1, so she'd become a 4/6, and you would draw 2 cards. Right, so that's how she works. Omen Keel, I think, is in general a very underappreciated portion of this card. The backside of her is whenever a vehicle you control deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles that many cards from the top of their library. You may play lands from among those cards for as long as they remain exiled. Crew 1. So that's just 1 and a blue to play that side of the card. So you could have just a Neverwinter Dryad in play, swing in with that, and start milling their deck. It's minimal, right? We're not a mill deck. It's not trying to be a mill deck. But the mill effect is kind of nice. And if you're having land drop issues, you're not getting them into your hand, you might pick some up from the opponent. And then you have maybe not snowlands that ultimately, feed into that particular part of the combo, but you're going again, right? You're getting back on track. The last card we have is Battle of Frost and Fire. So 3 blue, red. When it enters play, 4 damage to each non-giant creature and each planeswalker. Excellent. Second turn after cast, second act, scry 3. Good, right? You get a look at what's coming. If you haven't drawn your combo pieces, lets you dig sort of a little bit. Hopefully line up what you need to. The third act, whenever you cast a spell with a mana value of 5 or greater, this turn, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. So that would trigger if you play the front side of Jadzi, actual Jadzi, or the Icebreaker. So those are the 2 ways that would trigger, or another Battle of Frost and Fire. So I guess 3 technically. So you could trigger that final act those ways. So if you happen to be on the verge of your combo, you could always play out the Icebreaker if you had gotten to this third act point, draw the 3, and hopefully that draws you into the last bit that you need, right, for the combo to go off. But essentially these are the 2 draw aspects, and this one requires you to invest to get that draw. Cosima also requires investment because you have to have her exiled, you have to be dropping land into play, and keep her exiled. And then at some point you stop doing that on a land drop, bring her back, and then you get X cards in hand, whatever that is. Earlier I said she can be a little dangerous because if you have managed to do your combo loop a couple times, you might have already effectively milled yourself for 20 or 30 cards, depending what the opponent's doing if they're not dead yet. Drawing in, if she's kind of been sitting in the background, and then you you call her back and she's got like 20 voyage counters on her, you might just deck yourself right there, and then you lose. So it's situationally aware. If you have her kind of waiting in the wings, be careful. If you've done your loop a time or two, that you don't accidentally deck yourself as part of trying to win the game. So that's the deck. We're gonna leave it as is for now. Take it onto the ladder and see what we get.